What if the global economy is one heartbeat away from flatlining because of one island nation? Imagine jets rotting on runways, ERs drowning in silence, megacities frozen mid-rise, no war, no plague, just one silent vanishing, and everything breaks. They're called migrant workers, but that title doesn't even scratch the surface. So what really happens when the world loses its most overworked, undervalued lifeline? The answers will rattle your perception of power. Miss this and you'll be the last to know. Subscribe now or get blindsided with the rest. All right, listen up, because I'm not here to sugarcoat shit. If you've got thin skin, you might want to bail now. Let me tell you something straight. You think the UK's National Health Service is just some well-oiled machine, right? Nah, it's a fucking house of cards, waiting to collapse the second you take out the Filipinos. You think the NHS is running on pure magic? Hell no, it's Filipino nurses, Filipino workers who keep the damn thing going. It's a joke if you don't realize this. The UK is sitting there patting itself on the back for its respectable healthcare system, while it's Filipinos who are actually the ones keeping it from crumbling to dust. Don't believe me? Let me hit you with a fact. Over 15% of NHS nurses are Filipino. Yeah, let that sink in. When you're sick and lying in a hospital bed, you're not getting saved by some local nurse. You're getting saved by someone who had to leave their family halfway across the world to take care of your shit. And guess what? Without them, the NHS wouldn't last 5 minutes. You think Filipinos just take care of sick people and go home? Nah. They're out there working 12-hour shifts while the rest of the UK is out there crying about staff shortages. It's Filipinos who are filling the gaps in the healthcare system, and it's Filipinos who are saving your ass when you need help. And before you get all high and mighty, think about this. Filipinos are out there holding it down, not just in healthcare. They're taking over business, finance, tech, and construction like it's their damn job. Oh wait, it is their job. They're carrying the UK's entire economy while you're sitting there with your cup of tea thinking everything's fine. So here's the reality. The UK is teetering on the edge of disaster. Their economy is struggling, healthcare is in chaos, but guess what keeps the wheels turning? Filipinos. Without them, the UK is just another country that couldn't get shit done. So why are Filipinos constantly overlooked, underpaid, and ignored? Because they're too busy saving everyone else's ass to ask for recognition. They're just out there quietly carrying the weight while everyone else gets the credit. It's disgusting. And you want to know what really pisses me off? The UK knows they're in deep shit without Filipinos, and they still don't show them the respect they deserve. So yeah, Filipinos are the unsung heroes, and it's about damn time we stop acting like they don't exist. They're the backbone of this entire damn operation. And before you even think about scrolling past, check yourself. You better be subscribed, because the next piece of truth I'm about to drop is gonna make you rethink everything. So hit that subscribe button now. I'm not playing around. What if the real reason America hasn't collapsed is because of immigrants they barely talk about? Picture this: a hospital emergency room in New York. Chaos. Gurneys lining the hallways, alarms blaring, no nurses in sight, an old man gasps for breath, a child cries in the corner. Now imagine this scene duplicated in every major city across the country. Why? Because the people quietly holding the system together are gone. Filipinos, not just workers, America's hidden lifeline. From ICU units in California to retirement homes in Florida, nearly 40% of all foreign-trained nurses in the US are Filipino. Let that sink in. During COVID-19, while many were isolating, Filipino nurses were dying at 4 times the national rate, just to keep the system breathing. Meet Maria Santos, a nurse from Cebu. She left behind her 2 sons to work 16-hour shifts in a Chicago hospital. She held the hands of patients who had no one else. She missed birthdays, funerals, everything, just so someone else's family could survive. Now tell me, are these just workers? But it's not just hospitals. Filipinos have been in the US since the 1900s, farming America's fields, serving in its military, and now powering its tech and education sectors. In fact, over 250,000 Filipino soldiers fought under the American flag in World War II. Many never got full recognition, but they kept fighting. Today, tens of thousands serve in US defense, aviation, IT, and even Congress. In states like California, Texas, and New York, entire communities are Filipino built. They're not blending in, they're holding it down. Running restaurants, owning clinics, teaching at universities, building America's backbone from the shadows. So, Here's a hard truth. Without Filipinos, America's labor system would crack, its healthcare would collapse, and its economy would stall. Now you tell me, why isn't this being talked about? Smash that like button if this opened your eyes, and subscribe so you don't miss the next jaw-dropping truth. Because up next, we're heading to a country you'd never expect to be leaning this hard on the Philippines. And trust me, it's going to shake you. But first, drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you worked with a Filipino? Been helped by one? Lived in a community shaped by them? Let's open this conversation because silence is no longer an option. Picture this. Japan, the world's third largest economy, is on the brink of a disaster. And it's not because of a natural disaster or war. No, it's something far more terrifying. The youth is vanishing, and the aging population is rising at an alarming rate. The workforce is disappearing, and Japan's future looks uncertain. But wait, here's where it gets crazy. Do you know who's holding it all together? The Filipino workers. Hold up, are you shocked? Japan, a global superpower in innovation, technology, and manufacturing, relying on another country's workforce just to stay afloat? Sounds unbelievable, right? But that's exactly what's happening. Let me break it down. Imagine nursing homes and hospitals packed with elderly citizens in desperate need of care. The population's growing older by the day, but who's there to care for them? Filipino caregivers. Yes, you heard that right. Filipinos are saving Japan's elderly. Filipino hands are the ones lifting them from their beds, administering medicine, and ensuring they have a fighting chance at life. Let me tell you about Marina, a caregiver from Cebu. She came to Japan with nothing but a heart full of courage and a fierce sense of duty. Her story isn't just about a job, it's about life and death. If she and other Filipinos didn't step in, Japan's healthcare system would collapse. The elderly citizens depending on Marina would face a bleak future. Can you even imagine what would happen if these workers disappeared tomorrow? Now let's take it further. Japan isn't just about healthcare. This is the same country that invented the future, from robots to AI. So what happens when the engineers and IT professionals who are behind Japan's technological marvels are suddenly gone? The future stops. Filipino engineers and tech specialists are keeping Japan at the forefront of innovation, helping design the cutting-edge tech Japan is known for. Without them, Japan's once untouchable reputation for advanced technology would come crashing down. And here's the kicker. Japan knows it. They've literally created special visa programs just to bring in more Filipino workers because they know the gripping truth. Without Filipinos, their economy will stall. The workforce crisis is so severe that without Filipino labor, Japan's future would spiral downwards into chaos. So think about this for a second. Japan's economy, its healthcare, its technological dominance, all of it hinges on the Filipino workforce. If they leave, what happens to Japan? I know you're starting to see the picture now. The invisible backbone of an entire nation's economy is being held up by Filipino workers. But what if they weren't there? Would Japan's global power crumble? Would its cities and hospitals fall apart? The consequences are more dire than we're willing to admit. And here's the scary part. We never hear about these workers. They are literally saving lives, building cities, and keeping economies alive, yet they're invisible. Without them, Japan's rise to global prominence would have never happened. And yet, many of us don't even know their names. We take it all for granted. But the question remains, how long will it be before the cracks in the system start to show? Because when they do, it'll be too late to fix it. What if I told you the world's most iconic skyline, the one that screams luxury, wealth, and power, wasn't built by billionaires or royalty? What if I told you that beneath every glittering tower, every inch of this modern empire, there are invisible workers who risked it all, sacrificing their lives, their families, and their futures just to make this city stand tall? Workers whose names you'll never hear, but whose hands, sweat, and blood shaped every glass pane, every steel beam, and every inch of Dubai's towering structures. And what would happen if they suddenly disappeared tomorrow? Meet Antonio Reyes, a man from the Philippines who left everything behind, his family, his home, his entire life, to build a dream. Not his own dream, but the dream of a city that didn't even exist yet. Antonio arrived in Dubai over 12 years ago, full of hope, yet knowing the odds were stacked against him. He didn't have a high-paying job waiting for him, no cushy office or flashy lifestyle. What he had was a vision that together with thousands of others would help transform a barren desert into a global megacity. Antonio worked endless hours under the relentless desert sun, his hands calloused and worn, constructing the Burj Khalifa, Palm Jumeirah, and the Dubai International Airport. He wasn't just building buildings, he was building the future. And his story is just one of many. There are millions like him. But here's the kicker. Filipinos didn't just lay the foundations for Dubai's infrastructure, they created the very lifeblood of this city. Filipinos are the ones running Dubai's 5-star hotels, making sure your stay is flawless. They're the ones behind the aviation industry, keeping flights smooth, safe, and on time. They're everywhere, shaping the UAE's economy in ways you might never even notice, but you sure would feel if they disappeared. And here's a shocking truth. Without Filipinos, Dubai wouldn't exist as the powerhouse it is today. The UAE's meteoric rise from a desert land to a financial titan is directly tied to the blood, sweat, and tears of Filipinos who've worked tirelessly to build this empire. So what's the real cost of progress? Who's paying the price for the skyscrapers that scrape the sky? Filipino workers, and they're barely acknowledged. If this shocked you, smash that like button because you need to hear what's coming next. We're about to dive into a country where the Philippines' influence is so deeply woven into the fabric of their society that you won't believe it. Stay tuned, because what you'll learn next will completely change your view of global power. Drop your thoughts below. Have you ever seen Dubai's skyline in person or met a Filipino who's part of this legacy? Share your story in the comments. Let's talk about the unsung heroes who built the world. Roselle didn't cry when the plane left Manila. She cried 2 weeks later on the floor of a stranger's house in Darwin, holding a mop in one hand and a letter from her daughter in the other. The letter said, "Mama, I miss your cooking. I sleep with your old t-shirt." That night, Roselle didn't sleep. She worked double shifts at the nursing home, studied for her Australian certification in the breaks, nursed patients who couldn't remember their own names, but somehow always remembered hers. And now, Roselle runs the entire aged care unit. She hasn't been back to the Philippines in 3 years, but she's putting 2 kids through college, bought land in Cavite, and sends groceries to 7 families in her hometown. And she's not alone. Over 300,000 Filipinos are doing the same across Australia. Not just nurses, builders, engineers, welders, aged care workers, teachers. They left behind everything: comfort, home, the right to complain, and what do they get in return? The chance to hold up a country that doesn't even know their names. Australia is cracking under the weight of its aging population. 1 in 5 Australians will be over 65 by 2030. They're facing the worst skilled labor shortage in decades, and guess who's saving them? You guessed it, Filipinos. In Western Australia alone, Filipino skilled workers filled 12% of all new trade positions in 2025. Immigration has surged 28% in 1 year. And yet, most Australians will never hear their stories. And before we go any further, check if you're subscribed, because if you're not just missing stories, you're missing out on survival strategies, on truth, on the roadmap others are using while you're left behind. What's coming next could be your lifeline or your biggest regret. Back to Australia, imagine this: a single worker from Ilocos Norte lays the foundation of a Melbourne high-rise. A Pampanga-born electrician restores power to an entire school district after a blackout. A young woman from Taguig teaches Australian children to read, while her own kid back home reads her letters by candlelight. This isn't immigration, it's sacrifice, it's survival, it's how empires are quietly kept alive. But here's what no one tells you. If every Filipino left Australia tomorrow, the country would collapse by the weekend. Hospitals would go silent, construction sites would freeze, aged care facilities would be helpless. Think about that. Then ask yourself, who's really holding the power? And don't blink, because what's coming next in this list will leave you shaken. What if I told you Canada's entire healthcare system, the one everyone praises for being world-class, would crumble in days without one group of invisible workers? What if I told you that every time you've walked into a hospital or a care facility in Canada, the person you're relying on for your health and well-being wasn't a doctor or a high-paid specialist, but a Filipino? Let that sink in. Filipino nurses, caregivers, and personal support workers make up the heartbeat of Canada's healthcare system. You think the elderly are well cared for? The hospitals are up to scratch? Think again. Without Filipinos in the system, it wouldn't take long for chaos to reign. Entire hospitals would fall into disarray. Home care services? Gone. What's worse? This isn't just theory, this is the reality that's happening right now. Take Liza, a caregiver in Ontario. She wakes up before dawn every day, her mind filled with the weight of the people who depend on her. The elderly residents in her care have no family nearby. She is their family. Liza's hands are the ones that help them eat, walk, talk, and sleep. They trust her with their lives. But what happens if Liza stops showing up? Canada's aging population is exploding, and Filipinos are the ones who are keeping the dominoes from falling. Thousands of Filipinos like Liza are in the trenches, providing the human touch that keeps healthcare functional. Without them, this system would fall apart, and fast. And this is where it gets even darker. Filipinos don't just keep healthcare running, they keep Canada's economy alive. They're not only in hospitals, they're working the front lines of retail, customer service, and hospitality. They're the ones greeting you at the counter, making sure you get what you need with a smile, or serving you in a restaurant when you're at your lowest. But here's the shocking truth. Canada's entire service industry depends on them. Without Filipinos, entire cities would freeze, businesses would close, hospitals would empty out, the country wouldn't function. And here's the brutal kicker, Filipinos don't just work, they're the silent architects of Canada's future. They've built businesses, communities, and networks from scratch, becoming the foundation of Canada's economic survival. Without them, everything would come crashing down. This isn't just a heartfelt story, this is the reality. The question is, how much longer will the world ignore the silent power of Filipinos? How long will we continue to let them be the unseen backbone of nations that wouldn't survive without them? Let me tell you straight up, Singapore wouldn't survive a day without Filipinos, and that's a fact. You hear me? Without them, this city-state, this so-called financial powerhouse, would crumble. It's that simple. The moment you rip out the Filipino workforce, everything goes to hell. From the tech giants to the healthcare system to your average household. Filipinos are the ones keeping it alive, but don't you dare think they get the credit they deserve. They don't. Sarah knows this all too well. She's one of the countless Filipinos who came to Singapore with nothing but dreams and the hope of earning a living. She worked herself to the bone, day in, day out, cleaning, cooking, caring for a family that couldn't have survived without her. She didn't have the luxury of a 9-to-5. For years, Sarah slaved away, keeping the wheels of the city turning in the background while others enjoyed their comfort. But Sarah's story isn't just hers. It's every Filipino worker's story in Singapore. These Filipinos aren't just cleaning houses, they're saving lives in hospitals, keeping the city's infrastructure intact, and building the very foundations of its economy. They're the unsung heroes working in the shadows, and without them, it all falls apart. Let me hit you with some cold, hard facts. Over 200,000 Filipinos make up nearly 10% of Singapore's workforce. If you pull them out, everything collapses. No hospitals, no tech industry, no families functioning the way they do now. Do you really think Singapore could stay afloat? Hell no. You're looking at chaos. This isn't some hypothetical, it's reality. But here's where it gets even darker. What if these workers, these unsung saviors, just decided to leave? What if they said, you know what, we've had enough? The repercussions would be catastrophic. The healthcare system would fall apart. Families would drown in stress with no one to care for their elderly or children. The economy would suffer beyond repair. You don't believe me? Well, ask yourself this. What happens if it all came crashing down tomorrow? What would Singapore be without the Filipino workforce? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And right now, I'm about to show you something that'll make you rethink everything you knew about this place. Stick with me, because what you're about to learn will leave you silent, staring at the screen. But before we dive into that next truth, make sure to smash that like button. You're not just getting stories here, you're getting the truth, the raw, ugly truth that no one dares to talk about. And you won't find this anywhere else. So don't scroll past this. Trust me, you'll want to see what's next. What if I told you that Saudi Arabia, the land of billion-dollar oil reserves, marble palaces, and sky-piercing ambition, might secretly be the most fragile powerhouse on Earth? Because behind all that wealth and untouchable royalty lies a hidden force holding everything together. Filipinos. Over 1 million of them. Hospitals, refineries, power plants, royal households, construction sites. It's not the oil that keeps the kingdom alive, it's the people working in silence. And if they vanished overnight, chaos. Healthcare would collapse, oil production would stall, entire households would fall into disarray. The glittering towers of Riyadh, just empty shells without the hands that keep them breathing. Let me pull you in even deeper. There's Angelo, a diesel technician from Iloilo. Quiet, calm, brilliant. He doesn't wear a crown, but he controls an empire of machines that fuel Saudi's economy. Every morning at 5 a.m., he checks pressure gauges that, if left unchecked, could trigger explosions costing millions. That's the weight on his shoulders. No spotlight, no headlines, just pure quiet power. And there are thousands like him. And before we go any further, check if you're subscribed. Because if you're not, you're missing more than just stories. You're missing the truth. Stories the mainstream won't tell you. Stories that protect your future, your dreams, your next move. What's coming next will shock you, challenge you, maybe even save you from making the wrong decision about where to work, live, or retire. So if knowledge is power, you can't afford to scroll past this. Back to the kingdom. Filipino nurses aren't just treating patients. They're the soul of Saudi's medical system. Domestic workers aren't just helping out. They're raising the next generation of Saudi elites. Engineers? They're ensuring the kingdom's pipelines never sleep. This isn't just migration, it's lifeblood. And here's the haunting truth. Saudi Arabia is one letter of resignation away from collapse. One flight home could trigger a chain reaction no oil reserve could fix. But if you think that's intense, wait until you hear what's happening in Japan. An aging empire on the edge of workforce extinction, and Filipinos are being called to save it. The stakes even higher. Stay with me. This next part will blow your mind.